薄いのはほ。
プリズムパワーメイクアップカードレディー。
Welcome to Shojo Tell, where we discuss shoujo manga and tell who's hot and who's not, talk about themes, and just generally geek out. Today, May 18th, 2019, we'll be shoujo telling about the first 9 volumes of Ouran High School Host Club by Bisco Hatori. So that's the first half of the series. I'm your host, Ashley McDonald, and I'm joined by Rose Bridges.
Hey.
And Aisha Soleil.
Hey.
Okay, so these are familiar voices, or they should be, because Rose was on the Utana episode, which is our baby podcast first episode.
Yay.
Yay. And Aisha was on a very recent episode of Everyone's Getting Married.
Yes.
But for anybody who may not have listened to those episodes, let's start with Rose. Who are you? Why are you here? What do you love about shoujo manga?
Hi, I'm Rose. I write for Anime News Network sometimes. I'm also an academic researcher on anime soundtracks. I had a book that came out end of previous year on Cowboy Bebop. I'm working on some other academic projects, including a chapter for another book, and beginning my dissertation, so that's fun. And why do I love shoujo? Well, I've been reading it since I was in middle school, but I particularly love Ouran, so I'm super happy to be here.
I know, Ouran's your jam. We're going to get into it.
Yeah, it is very much my jam.
Yes. And Aisha, what do you do?
I mean, I'm not nearly as impressive as Rose.
It's okay.
I'm
not
literally,
either. That's fine.
Right?
I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm impressed. I'm very impressed. I am literally just a mom who loves manga. I have a YouTube channel where I review manga, and I have an Instagram, and I guess I love shoujo. It was my gateway drug. Like, my first series was Fruits Basket, and then Ouran High School Host Club was one of my first ones. And just from there, now granted, I was definitely in my 20s when I first discovered it. So it was like, whoa, what is this? How did I live this long without finding this
magic?
And so after that, I just kind of, it went downhill from there.
Or uphill. It depends on how you look at it.
Or uphill, yes.
Okay, so we're here to talk about this little-known series called Ouran High School Host Club. And
Very obscure.
It's very obscure. And since Rose, you are, I think, probably the biggest fan among us, would you like to describe what Ouran High School Host Club is about for any noobs out there who don't know what it is?
All right, so Ouran is about a ordinary girl named Haruhi Fujioka. Although not that ordinary, she's pretty cool. But she's the protagonist. She's a commoner. She's not rich, so she gets a scholarship to study at this fancy rich people's school. And she comes in, and she's not particularly girly, and so she's mistaken for a boy. When she enters Music Room 3, which is where the host club hangs out. And then she accidentally breaks a vase, and they tell her that in order to work off her debt, she needs to join the host club as a host before, they all figure out that she is in fact a girl. But she's good enough at passing for a boy that they let her keep doing it. And so she becomes friends and possibly more with a with a very colorful group of boys. Tamaki, who is the very extroverted, campy leader of the host club. Everything is over the top for him. Kyoya, who is the much cooler vice president of the host club, and Tamaki's best friend somehow. The twins who have their thing. They're very
their thing.
Very Jamie and Cersei thing.
Ow, deep cuts.
No.
Oh, come on, everybody. People should be familiar with that right now. Very small think pieces. Hikaru and Kaoru, and the also affectionate cousins, Honey and Mori senpai. And Renge, the fabulous manager. Can't forget about her. I certainly don't forget about her.
You don't ever forget about her.
She's awesome. I love Renge.
Okay, we can get into that. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the series is just a series of hijinks where Haruhi is pretending to be a hot boy, but is really just cute and is falling in love with the other hot boys, paying off a massive debt. Yay! Hijinks ensue.
Yeah, hijinks ensue is probably the best
Is
summary of Ouran.
Right, that's perfect.
Pretty sure most of this wasn't like plotted. Some episodes just happened. You're like, okay, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but that's fine. And I will say that for me, I definitely watched the anime first.
Ah, okay.
Me as well. I'm actually this is my first time reading through the entire manga, but I've read bits and pieces of it, and I know what happens. So like I'm someone who doesn't mind spoilers.
You're
so
prepared.
I'm prepared. Yeah.
Okay.
So then I'd kind of been apprehensive about reading it, but I'm really compared to the anime, but I'm really enjoying it so far. So. And I'm enjoying some of the ways in which it's different, too.
Yeah, I was going to say,
yeah.
I had actually read, so I watched the anime first, probably like when it first came out in the mid-2000s or whatever, in 2000s. Then I read the whole manga in 2013, I guess. I had a little stint in 2013 when I was unemployed, and I just read lots of manga. This was one
Good thing to do when you're unemployed.
Yeah.
Yes. It's what I do.
Yeah, right? That's what you do when you're unemployed. You read manga.
Yes.
And then, this will be my first time since then rereading it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I started reading this, I think not long after it first started coming out or started releasing in English. So I followed it for most of its time. And
cool.
I remember when the anime first became a thing, and I remember reading that she was like super excited about, like, cause she, puts in like the sidebars, like, it's an anime. So that was like really exciting. I was super like, just so many memories, but this is the first time I've reread it in like close to a decade, so it's been interesting. It's been interesting. I was definitely a lot younger when I read this, so
yeah. Well, we'll get into whether Ouran has aged well in certain
right.
aspects.
Right.
Yeah, I should say also that it was really funny reading this. So I had an exchange with the head of Shoujo Beat imprint on Twitter, and she was like, yeah, this was my first manga that I started editing, aside from like some other like volumes of random things here and there, starting at volume 3. And I was like, oh yeah, there's a big noticeable change between the translations from volume 3 on. Okay, it's much better, but like, oh goodness. Through the first 2 volumes, I was like, is this Scooby-Doo? I don't understand. Why are y'all saying Jeepers? Dippity doo. Is this Goofy? You said Garsh. You literally said Garsh. Is this? No. I hate it. Yes.
Oh man.
It was great.
Yes.
It's great. I gotta say Jeepers now for this whole episode. Y'all gonna deal with it. But yeah, so you can buy all of Ouran from Viz, obviously. But yeah, they didn't go back and retranslate those first 2 volumes, so prepare yourself.
They did not.
They did not.
They didn't.
Ooh, and it's 18 volumes. The anime is 26 episodes, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't really remember the anime that well. That's been all real hot seconds since I watched that. If you watch the anime, you should be able to follow most of this discussion.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I rewatch it periodically, and also it is currently on Netflix, I think.
Yes, it is.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Yeah, it goes on and off, but currently it's on.
Excellent. So you can watch it on Netflix. Everybody has Netflix. All the commoners have Netflix.
that was good.
That was a good one.
That was good. I like that.
Okay, so we won't get into, I think we should keep this first, like, why should people read Ouran? First couple questions, a little spoiler free, but we did get, obviously, the most important question from @Hoodley on Twitter is, who's your favorite host in the group and why?
Kyoya.
Kyoya?
Oh my gosh, me too!
You too!
Yes! Why? I'm so glad you said, okay, I'll let you, go ahead, Rose, I'll let you go first.
I mean, in terms of, like, if I were to join the host club, who I would request, probably Haruhi. But, like,
absolutely, yes.
But Kyoyo is my favorite character, and I think it's because he comes off at first as just such a jerk, but I have kind of a soft spot for characters who are sort of like that particular kind of like cool-headed jerk, but with a hidden heart of gold. And Kyoya sort of hits that right in the feelings. Also, I went to a high school where a lot of my friends were wealthier than I was, and he's the one who kind of reminds me the most of the people that I actually knew. He's the character in the host club, like besides Haruhi, who feels most like a real person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's part of why he appeals to me, is he reminds me of some specific friends I had in high school a little bit, who also tried to be super cool and detached, but were nicer people deep down and should have just embraced that. Hopefully they eventually did.
Hopefully.
Can only hope.
I mean, I love Kyoya because I am a little bit of a Megane. What is it? Megane. Otaku?
Megane.
Yeah, I love glasses. I have a thing. I love that. But honestly, I really liked the fact that he is just he's chill. I am a very anxious person, and I like people who are a little bit more calm. I also like people who are good with money because I am not. So
Me neither.
I think maybe he reminds me a little bit of my husband, and that might be why I like him, because
That's cute.
He's very like calm, cool, collected. Kind of can come off as a jerk to some people, but he is always good to me. Just like I feel like Kyoya has a little soft spot for Haruhi, and so I love Kyoya. I adore him.
Okay, that's fair. I have unpopular opinion, and Hikaru is my favorite.
Really?
Male.
Really?
Yeah, it's bad. I know.
I've warmed up to the twins a bit reading the manga.
Oh, there we go. See?
I mean, I still don't like them, but
oh no. Okay. See, I always like the tsundere characters, and you all like kind of made Kyoya seem like a Soon, but he doesn't read as Soon to me, where Hikaru is like the closest to Soon we're getting in this series. And for me, the way that the twins do their dumb, like, I'm testing people's love by making them guess which one is which, and they never get it right, and then they reveal how shallow they are thing, I'm like, I do this destructive to myself testing of people, or I did. It's relatable. They're relatable to me.
I was thinking of them because I have a close friend who's an identical twin, and I was at her apartment the week before, to watch Game of Thrones, and she had a picture with her sister, and I could not tell which one was which, even though she's my close friend. And I was thinking like, because most of my friends who are twins are fraternal twins, and they look pretty different from their twin,
right?
But like she, I think, is the first friend I've had like since school where like I genuinely couldn't tell her apart from her twin sister, and that was kind of interesting to me.
And you were like, I'm afraid now.
Yeah,
like what this means about me.
But her sister lives in another state, so I don't really have a problem. Doesn't have a problem in day-to-day life, but it was just interesting.
Yeah. So like I don't know, I feel them, and I like seeing them be grouchy all the time. Like there was one instance where they were like, they're full of contradictions and everything, but they're like, why didn't you tell us she was being phony too, and all these things. And I was like, yeah, be angry. That.
I will say that as far as the twins go, I do like that. This isn't a spoiler or anything, but I do feel like they get the most character development throughout the story. Like, I like that. They do change. So I'll give them that.
I would agree with that too.
Yeah. They benefit from being the ones that are in Haruhi's class.
Yes.
Whereas like Kyoya has dimensions to him, but I think he kind of has those from the beginning. Like it's just that you sort of slowly come to see them.
Right.
But we all agree that the best aspect of the series is just Haruhi's existence.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Yes, 100%.
Everybody should read Ouran for Haruhi.
Yes, she is. I want to like be her, and I want to adopt her. Like there's just I have so many feelings about her. When I was younger, I had a crush on her because I was when I first read this, I was a little closer to her age, still older, but a little closer. Now I'm like way too old to have a crush on her, but definitely, I definitely, I'm like Tamaki. I'm like, I'm your mom. Mom loves you. Like that's kind of how I feel about her right now. It's like I just want to adopt her. She's so she's so great and pure and
Yeah.
sweet and ugh.
Yeah, she's like I mean I wrote an article for Anime News Network. I wrote a couple articles that mention Ouran. One of the points that I made about like what made it special is that it has an unusual heroine who's a character in her own right and not just sort of a self-insert fantasy. And I mean I think some other good anime reverse harems have that too. Like I think Fruits Basket. I mean Toru is more of a traditional reverse harem protagonist, but she still has her own personality and interiority and depth. But like Haruhi really felt like a refreshing character and not like the sort of character that I usually get in shoujo manga.
I definitely agree with that.
She feels like she walked out of like a Yuri manga or something. that's why Lobelia wants her so badly.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're like, you don't know what you really are, Haruhi, and she's like, whatever.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Yeah. Haruhi for me is just like goals. I'm like, yeah, I wish I could look that cute when I'm wearing a dress and then that cool when I'm like wearing my normal
exactly.
like, clothes.
I've definitely attempted that and it doesn't work for me. So I envy her and her ability to just be androgynous and look great either way. I love that so much. I love her attitude about like gender norms in general. Like she just doesn't care. She's like, oh, I don't understand why I can't do this just because I'm a girl. Like I love her attitude. I love that she's not a pushover. She kind of goes along with all the shenanigans because she wants to. You know, it's like, it's fine. It's entertaining. I accept these guys. If she didn't like them, she wouldn't hang around. You know, I love her for that. She's very independent.
And I feel like she's a big part of why, like, Ouran is so appealing across gender and sexuality divides and stuff. Like, she's such a good character who a lot of people can relate to. And, you know, probably when we get into how much Ouran has aged and stuff, I'll be more going to talk about this. But, like, you know, I kind of think that I kind of feel like Ouran stood out in the 2000s when there wasn't as much sort of transgressive shoujo. And Haruhi was a big part of that for me.
Yeah, I was interested because I had this debate with my roommate Asher, who's been on this podcast several times, at lunch before. We were like, or he was like, I don't know that Ouran was as popular as Fruits Basket. And I was like, interesting. I kind of feel like Ouran did a better job at crossing a gender divide, though.
Yeah, I think so, too.
Yeah.
Like Fruits Basket is when I feel like I have to talk up a lot. Because like I do think that Fruits Basket has a lot of appeal, even if you're not a usual shoujo fan. But I feel like it's when I have to talk up a lot. Whereas like I talk to my friends who are like, you know, straight guy anime fans about Ouran. Oh, I love Ouran.
Yeah.
Like it happens so often. Like so many of them already like it and have already discovered it on their own. Whereas if Fruits Basket's one of those, I kind of have to say, well, I know how it sounds, but trust me a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Accurate. Yeah, I was like, I feel like a lot of guys are just like, no, Ouran, it's funny, it's cool, like, where they're not like that with Fruits Basket. They're like, okay. But all right, we will go into spoiler land and talk about some characters that we haven't brought out because I feel like some of these characters might get left behind if we didn't do an explicit like character.
I do have more to say about my interpretation of Kyoya whenever we're ready for that.
Okay, there we go. Okay. We're getting there. All right, so yes. But yeah, so now we're going to spoil all the things. It is about the first half of the series, so I don't define what a spoiler is for you. If you don't care, then I don't care. I'll try to explain briefly like where Volume 9 ends in case you haven't read this in a hot second. Volume 9 basically ends with, where does it end? They're ending where like Tamaki is starting to realize his feelings. He's had a fever. His dad is there. He like kisses her on the forehead. Hikaru also gets a moment with her. Everybody's starting to realize things like Honey and Mori are actually going to graduate, ? That's a thing that's like being led up to. I think in terms of anime, it's a little bit after Casanoda has come in and been like,
Casanoda is one of the last like episodes before they have their like anime original ending.
Yeah, so he's like still there in the ending. That's like volume 8 or whatever.
I think they've covered basically everything that's in the anime because there are a lot of
Yeah.
original things in the anime.
Yeah, I definitely think anything that's in the anime is in these first 9 volumes. So
Yeah, definitely.
here we go. Okay, so we've already talked about Haruhi. We haven't really talked about Tamaki. He's the leader.
Yeah. So if you don't mind me going first, Tamaki
Sure.
is. I loved him the first time I read this.
Ooh, and you
This
don't
time
love him now?
around, he got on my nerves. But he's still like in a very good natured way. Like, I don't hate him, but I did find myself rolling my eyes a lot because he's so ridiculous and so full of himself, and it is funny, but then I guess I'm thinking of it from the lens of like a mom, and my oldest son just turned 13, so he's in that teenage age, and in my head I was like, oh my God, I'd really not want to have a child like Tamaki. Like, because he's just so. I want my kids to be confident, but oh my gosh, like the whole thing about like, oh, commoners and oh, I'm so beautiful, I could be a model. I'm like, okay, dude, calm down. You're not that cute. I mean, he's cute, but it's just he's annoying. He's annoying, but he's funny, I guess, and like he makes the comedy in this series, so he's fine, I guess.
He's the thing that actually everything revolves around.
Right.
Yeah, he's someone where I really like him as a character in both anime and manga, although I can't stop thinking, because I watched the dub, and I can't stop thinking about him being voiced by Vic Mignogna. In what I would have said before was his best performance, but like it just, it makes it hard to enjoy it now, which stinks because I like a lot of the other performances in the Ouran dub, especially Haruhi and Kyoya. But I just he's a really entertaining character, but someone who I just think, man, he would drive me crazy if I knew him in real life.
Yeah.
Yes. He's exhausting. And maybe because I'm an introvert also.
Yeah, I am
so,
too.
like, I'm like, ooh, yo, you do too much. Like, he's just,
I don't see how Kyoya deals with. Well, I have my theories about why Kyoya puts up with him.
Right.
But yeah, he would drive me insane.
But for the sake of the story, he's entertaining.
Yeah,
and
like, he's a good central figure for the host club, because he kind of like embodies the ridiculousness of the whole concept inside himself.
Oh yeah, definitely.
He definitely does that. Yeah, Tamaki, overall I like him. He's doing great for everybody else. Like, he's like, come to this host club that is a facade, but then be your true self there. And I'm like, wow, Tamaki, that's deep. What backwards logic you have, but it's nice.
I think what I like about Tamaki so much is that he is just like so selfless, and I think that's what makes him so likable as a character. Is that like he would be, I don't think he would be as likable if he was more selfish person. And so the fact that he almost like to a fault is selfless and puts other people before himself, like it both gives him like a depth to his character that gets explored, and it also, because you can't really be that self-sacrificing forever. But it also makes him like why he's so likable. Like it's hard to dislike someone even if they're very annoying and in your face if they're a fundamentally nice person.
That's very true, and he is a really nice person. And I do feel for him because in these last couple of like the last 8th and 9th volume is when the grandmother is introduced, and I had forgotten about her, so she's awful, but seeing Tamaki like deal with that is kind of heartbreaking, and it did endear me to him more, so I could forgive his annoyingness because he's just dealing with he just wants love. He wants to be accepted, and he gives, I think, what he wants, if that makes sense. Like he's a giving person, a kind person, because that's what he wants back. So all right, Tamaki, I'll give you a pass.
The chapter where he with his grandmother, and then he like covers up Haruhi doing a rich person faux pas thing.
Yeah.
It was definitely the one
Yeah.
where I was like, okay, Tamaki, I actually like really feel this. My heart is going doki doki in this chapter.
I know, yeah.
And I feel like 2 lines that I brought out from that chapter that like really stood out to me as like fundamentally Tamaki were that he was like, the customer is always right, and that's why he's like always being self-sacrificing and serving them and like doing things that, you know, the twins definitely are like, no, blah, blah, blah. People hate them, who cares? And like whatever. And Tamaki's like, no, princess, I will serve you forever, and like I'm here for you. But then he also said, I'm me before I'm a suo. And I was like, wow, deep cuts, Tamaki. Bold.
Oh, yeah.
Very big contrast with Kyoya.
Yeah.
Right. Very true. Very true. Because he's all about getting that approval from his, you know, dad and
Yeah.
making sure that he's keeping, you know, doing well by the family name. Bless his heart. Kyoya.
Y'all in your Kyoya feel.
He keeps coming back to him.
I know.
know.
You're like, you think the main character is Tamaki, but it's Kyoya.
But it's really Kyoya.
I would say that the main thing that annoys me about Tamaki is how dense he is about his feelings
Yeah.
for Haruhi. Like, it's pretty grating to be like, oh god, it's volume 9. There are 9 more volumes.
Right. Yeah.
Well, they've got to keep that unresolved sexual tension unresolved as long as possible. It's a shoujo manga.
I know, but
That's
it's so
true.
blah.
It is really frustrating. And that was one thing, like, this time around, I skimmed through a lot. Like, I skipped a lot of, like, sort of side character arcs and stuff this time
Yeah.
around because I really wanted to get to I wanted to see, you know, Tamaki finally realize his feelings, and I'd forgotten that it took so
takes a
long.
while.
Yeah.
So long. And he's still, by the end of chapter or volume 9, he still is like in denial. It's like, dude,
Dude, get it together.
I don't understand
Yeah.
because I remember being that age and like I totally knew when I had crushes on people, you know,
Yeah.
like I mean, teenagers aren't dumb. Well, Tamaki is, but
Tamaki,
but it
why
was
aren't you
just-
horny?
right. It's like, I don't understand. Ugh, it's so weird to me that it just takes so long. So that's a little frustrating, but I guess I can give him a pass for being a nice
He's a
guy.
nice boy.
Some teenagers can be pretty dense about that kind of stuff.
True, that is
God.
true.
Like me when I was a teenager.
I definitely was not. I was not I was not dense.
I was at least amused by the fever chapter where it was like, you know, his dad kisses him on the forehead and he's like, yeah, it's perfectly normal for fathers to want to kiss their children on the forehead. And Tamaki's like, awesome, this explains everything. And like, I can kiss Haruhi on the forehead and it's fine. That's what fathers do. I'm like, oh god, okay. Cool.
Yeah, and you know his dad had like no idea. You know, if his dad knew what he was really thinking, his dad would probably be like, okay, dude,
Okay, no,
Yeah.
it's not the same.
it's not how that works.
Okay, but let's do Kyoya round 2, which Yara already
Yes.
like got back
I know. So I want to hear Rose's thoughts. Or yeah. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so my hot take
Yes.
is that I know we're going to get to the shipping part later, but I read Kyoya is in love with Tamaki and not aware of that fully.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Keep going.
see that.
Okay. Yeah.
I just I guess like and this is more less of this in the manga, more when I've rewatched the anime. I guess I just see a lot of relatable closeted gay kid feelings that are hard to put into words when I watch Kyoya's arc.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I like now I'm like, now that I'm talking about it here, it's hard to think of the specific details about it. Whereas like a couple days ago I could have written an essay, but I'm like you know how it is.
Yeah, you gotta
but-
hit while the
Yeah.
inspiration's there.
Yeah, I got to write it down maybe for the next podcast. But yeah, I think it's just sort of this like idea of, you know, having to live up to this ideal and failing at it, and then suddenly somebody comes across who sort of basically sweeps him off his feet and blows his mind with all these new feelings. And like that chapter when I have like 3 favorite episodes in the anime. two of which are Kyoya centric ones. One of them is his backstory one, and so when I was reading that chapter about it in the manga, like it's just so funny how he just seems like so overwhelmed with this desire to please Tamaki and do everything you can for him, and he's like, why am I doing this, and that was just a very funnily familiar thing.
Oh, wow. Now that you say that, I'm so like surprised that just went completely over my head.
I mean, I'm not sure it's intentional at all. It could be just my read of it. But I mean, I know the voice the English voice actor has said in a video that he read Kyoya is in love with both Tamaki and Haruhi.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I dig it.
Love that. I'm so shook right now.
It's okay.
Like, I'm just like, what? Let me go reread that. That's amazing. I mean,
it could be just my read on it and trying to, make it more personal for myself. I don't think it's intentional necessarily, but like that's sort of, I think, part of why I'm attached to his character. Because he's certainly, like, I think if you're going to read anybody that way, it would be him. More so than, I mean, maybe you could read Honey and Mori as in love with each other, but that's a better conversation saved for the shipping corner.
Oh my goodness. I mean, yeah, the volume literally ended with Mori being like, oh, but I do want to kiss Honey. Like,
oh, no. Yeah, I know. I like...
It did.
That was the end of volume 9, right?
Yes, I took a picture of that because I wanted to remind myself to like talk about that. So yeah,
I know that happened. That was canonical.
I used to be more into that ship, but guess we can talk about it in the shipping corner.
Yeah, that's fine. But we also do have to talk about their characters. I feel like those are the two that I wouldn't talk about. Like, if I didn't force myself to talk about all the characters, like, I wouldn't care about them.
Well, there's not that much to them. I feel like even more than the twins, they're kind of like the comic relief characters. Because even when like there's that chapter with his brother where Honey Senpai seems like he's going to get some depth, and it just ends up being set up for a joke.
Yeah, so, it was. I skipped that. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I skimmed that one because I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm not a huge fan of Honey. I know a lot of people love him because he's supposed to be so cute. Yeah. I don't get it. I don't really find him cute.
I think the creator based him off of, I think she might have said in an interview, but I'm not sure, that she based him off of Momiji from Fruits Basket.
Yeah, I think that was in one of the side columns or something. Yeah.
Okay.
Momiji's a somewhat more complex character. I think.
Right. Yeah, definitely. He's not just a cutesy character. Like, I feel like Honey is just cute, and they try to give him kind of like a backstory where he's like, I guess he's supposed
like,
to be
I want to
strong.
Eat sweets, and
they're
like,
but
no,
I can't because
I
have to. Right. I was just like, okay.
They all sort of have the theme of like the house club is where they learn to be themselves and belong. He just has the most simplified version of that.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I do love cake though. I get it.
Yeah, I get.
You feel it.
I get him.
I feel him on this level.
Right. I can totally relate to that. Except for I'm just like, yeah. As far as necessity for the story, I'm like, you guys can.
I share his and Kyoya's blood type. Like, it's a joke about it in the anime, which is apparently also Bisco Hatori's blood type, because she says that in one of the asides. But so I'm like, I relate. I sleep late. I can be grumpy.
Yes, that's their most relatable characteristic. Sleeping late and being grumpy.
Yes.
And I'm particularly grumpy if you wake me up when I want to be asleep.
Yeah.
Relatable. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Honey and Mori, I'm just like, y'all are here for like the comic side, and I'm like not here for that.
Yeah, it's just I will say that I don't dislike Mori. I don't really I'm very ambivalent to him, because there are times when I want to like him, because I'm pretty sure that he's a Taurus, like his birthday I think he has a May birthday, and I am a May baby. I am a Taurus, and I usually want to like Taurus, people. But
I'm an Aries, which makes me like Tamaki.
Yeah. Yes.
Apparently.
Apparently. Exactly. I'm an Aquarius. Was any of them an Aquarius? I wasn't.
I think Honey Senpai might be.
Honey.
No!
I think so.
This is a tragedy. Okay.
I know Kyoya is a Scorpio and the twins are Virgos, I think.
I'm
Missed
pretty sure.
opportunity. They should be Geminis.
Right? That would have been so much better. But yeah, no, Mori and Honey, they're fine. I don't know.
They're
I don't
there.
think they have.
They're
They don't
funny.
have much of a.
I liked Mori a lot in the anime because I was a big Travis Willingham fan, and he plays at the time I watched it the first time. He plays Mori because I'm a big Full Metal Alchemist fan, and Roy Mustang is my favorite character. So I was happy to hear him once an episode, and
Yeah, where you read one line. It was the best
which
line.
which he likes to joke about at his con panels about Ouran was so much hard work.
So hard to be Mori.
I was gonna joke that my intro is kind of unintentionally Mori-ish. I was just like, hey.
Yes. I kind of feel bad because when I watched the anime, I definitely watched it with subs, and because I had a big crush on the voice of Tamaki. Mamoru, I think is what his name is. Miyano.
Yeah, Mamoru Miyano.
Yeah,
he's quite he's something.
I like loved him. I don't watch as much anime as I read manga these days, but man, Miyano was he was my dude. Like I tried to watch everything that he was a part of. But yeah, I don't know anything about the English voice actor, so I don't really have that connection.
Currently,
guess.
that's probably for the better.
Yeah, I mean, with all the drama.
Drama. Oh no.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
So
Mori and
sad.
Honey, they exist. They're there for the lulz. Sometimes you lull
Yeah.
at them. That's fine. That's good. Okay, I do want to give Kaoru and Hikaru round 2 for me is
Okay.
for me. What I liked about them was that they do a little bit different of they have this whole us versus them mentality, but they don't actually frame it as us versus them. They're like us versus not us is how they look at the world. And I'm like, whoa.
Hey, this is also like Jamie and Cersei.
Oh,
They
yeah.
bleep everyone who isn't us.
Yeah. Oh, God. And
Okay,
then I
I'll
guess
stop making that joke.
you're making them so much more terrible for me than I want them to be.
I mean,
I like the Lannister characters.
I have not watched anything of the most recent season of Game of
Okay.
Thrones because I'm like, no, I don't need that in my life.
Lips zipped. Okay.
But yeah, I guess that one chapter about how Tamaki recruited them to the host club that was told apparently from Kaoru's perspective because it opened with the one not me is Hikaru and the one not Hikaru is me. Just really solidified this, identity is so circumstantial a lot of the time. It's it reminded me a lot. It's interesting because I don't feel like the twins have much to say on the gender front in this manga, whereas many other characters do. But it reminded me a lot of the end of the novel The Power by Naomi Alderman.
I have not read that yet, but I'm going to.
You have not? Okay. I don't think this line is a spoiler or anything.
It's fine. I don't care about
Yeah,
spoilers.
oh yeah, you
but-
don't care about spoilers.
Maybe other people do who
Okay.
are listening to this. Who knows?
So maybe don't listen to this line, but I don't think it gives away anything about the plot. But it's about how gender is a shell game. One of the characters is just being gender is a shell game. You mutz it around and then you lift it up. And it's what is a woman, whatever a man isn't? What is a man, whatever a woman is not?
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, that is definitely what Hikaru and Kaoru are about right now. Deep. Okay.
Well, I think one of the things that's interesting about watching them, and I mean, it's a very typical sort of twin character arc, is sort of watching their individual personalities slowly emerge, and particularly Kaoru sort of come out of his brother's shadow. Whereas in this early part of the manga, they still basically seem interchangeable, but as you go through, and the anime does a really good job of showing us too, you sort of slowly see them sort of become their own people.
Right. Since you said that, one of my favorite story arcs actually is the one where Haruhi it's summer break, and Haruhi goes to that pension to help her dad's friend.
Yeah.
And there's that so that's kind of when
That's one of the first times we see them separate.
Yeah.
The twins.
Yes. And I actually love, that's what I meant about like character growth too, because it's Kaoru. I get them mixed up. It's Kaoru is the one that likes, or that we think likes Haruhi, right?
No,
Yeah.
Hikaru is
I
the
think
one.
Hikaru.
Hikaru is the one.
Yeah, Kaoru is the nicer one.
Kaoru is the nicer one, and Hikaru is the mean one?
Yeah.
Or the meaner one?
Yeah, but like, you know,
Okay.
separated by a thread.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So, Hikaru, whenever, like, Kaoru is like, okay, you need to go out on a date with Haruhi, like that whole thing, I actually loved that because you did get to see them separate. You got to see how he dealt with not having his brother with him, and how he dealt with like the fact that Haruhi has friends outside of them, because that was a big thing. He's like, I don't understand. You have us. So like, why
We're your
why
best
do you
friends.
need other? Yeah, like why do you need anyone else? He's not part of the group. I loved that story arc, and I loved how like Haruhi handled it, and how she taught him without even trying to teach him about like empathy and you know, and compassion and paying attention to other people, and you know, that knowing that words aren't always necessary if you pay attention to someone that you care about. So that I loved that. That was like one of my favorite story arcs. I don't remember what chapter it was, or even which volume. Maybe volume 5?
It's somewhere in the middle there.
I think somewhere around there. And I really liked that though. That was, although I still can't really tell the two of them apart. Clearly, I don't know which one. but
I think that's the point.
Yeah, I think
Right.
I still like visually would be like, I don't know. You have to
Just like, I don't
give
know
me
which
more
one.
evidence.
But personality wise, you can start to see like there's a difference between them. And you have the one brother that's like trying to help the other realize that they are separate people. It's just, it's nice. I love their character growth.
I would say though that they actually don't fundamentally change character. Like they do.
True.
I don't think they learn empathy necessarily. I think just that their circle grows. Like they're like, we've included
fair.
Haruhi in us. We've included Tamaki in us. Everybody else is still not us. Like
that's
between
fair.
our group.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, that's not fair for them to do that, but it's, your assessment is fair.
Yeah. Which I mean is still like growth. It's just, you know, I don't think they fundamentally like change who they are at all.
I think that's why the twins always kind of left me a little cold. Like I feel like the way that I read the twins is how a lot of people read like Kyoya. It's just they always. But see, like, the difference for me is that Kyoya clearly had, like, a heart and empathy underneath that cool exterior, even if he didn't always want to acknowledge it. Whereas, like, the twins never seemed like there was anything deeper than their, you know, too cool for you jerk exterior. Maybe a little bit with Kaoru, but not that much. Like, but I mean, I do think they grow a lot as characters, but I'm not sure they ever become nice people who care about anyone outside of each other.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you look at like when you get more of their backstory, they were jerks as children. So the fact that they were like such like diabolical, like little
their nanny story is lit. Okay?
Oh my god!
Oh my god, that story was something else.
Like again, I'm reading it from the lens of a mom.
Why didn't that make it
Whoa.
into the anime?
Yeah,
Jeez.
that should have been in the anime.
It was just so like it hit me just as much the second time as it did the first time, and I thought, I really hope that my children don't act like this. Like they're terrifying. Children that are that like diabolical actually terrify me, because there's like some of these kids, y'all. I'm telling you, kids
are monsters.
They're already monsters just in general, but for them to be aware of their monsterness and to use it, like that's scary. And so they're not my favorite, because they just, I don't see them as necessarily my view of I guess good people or whatever. And maybe I shouldn't, you know, project onto people or onto characters, but they're just I don't like them.
That's fair. I understand why people don't like them.
They sure are entertaining, though.
Yeah.
Yes, they're very entertaining.
They bring the hype.
But,
But yeah, so for anybody who has only watched the anime who might be listening to this, you should definitely just go pick up whatever volume that's in, read this chapter. It involves a lot of psychological twists and turns involving
especially if you are a fan of the twins.
Yeah, especially if
they
you're
get some of their best moments in the manga, I think.
Yeah, you really you get to see the extent of their
craziness.
Yeah.
Their most sinister side is like real life in that. Okay, but let's move on to some recurring side characters. This will lead us into another listener question. I think the first one we should talk about, who's very big, is Haruhi's father, Ranka.
Yes.
So we got a question from Lumranma Yasha on Twitter, who is the host of Manga Mavericks podcast. How do you feel about Ranka as a portrayal of a bisexual drag queen? Do you think his femininity is ever caricatured in demeaning ways? As a bisexual assigned male at birth person, I like him and think he's genuinely written empathetically. But I don't like that Tamaki calls him should I say this word on the podcast?
You could spell it out, maybe.
Yeah, okay. Tranny as a slur.
Yeah, well, I remember there being a lot of discourse about the use of that word in the anime and the manga. I mean, it is worth noting that the original Japanese word has a similar connotation, so it is not an invention of the translators or the dub company. Or there was some weird, like, urban myth that, like, the transphobic language in that anime was that Vic Mignogna wanted it in there.
No,
What?
No, that's not it.
No, that's not what was going on. It was their attempt to make an offensive Japanese word into an offensive English word. And I also think it can't be understated, like, how clueless most people were about trans issues in, like, 2006 or whatever we're talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Not that excuses it.
No. But it clarifies, I guess.
Definitely the thing that has aged the least well.
Right. Yes.
That and a lot of the Lobelia stuff.
Yeah.
I think too.
Yeah. Yeah. Just I do feel like any of the issues that dealt, or any of the parts that dealt with, like, sexuality, none of those aged very well. I had forgotten a lot about, I can't talk. I had forgotten a lot of that. And so this reread, I was taken aback because I had forgotten that they used the T word, and I had forgotten that there were, like, jokes that, I mean, I try not to get offended too easily, but I found myself, like, like, just a little bit hurt a couple of times, with certain things that were, like, when with the what is it? Roberia?
Roberia.
Yeah.
Technically, you can translate it either way.
Right. So, like, the way even that they were talked about, like that, like Tamaki and some of the other characters talked about them being, like, lesbian as if it was a bad thing. I was a little bit triggered because I was like, I don't get the problem. Like, I was just like, I don't but for the time, and again, not excusing it, but for the time, I think that you could say it was handled well, I guess, for the time. I don't,
I mean, for me watching that, I didn't get into Ouran until I was in my 20s, I should say. So, but I mean, I feel like stuff like that, when I watched it in anime or read it in manga at the time, it kind of just felt novel that somebody was talking about it.
Right.
And also, I think it's just, there's a weird disconnect with Ouran where, like, textually it can be quite homophobic and transphobic. And it was definitely, like, an interesting experience reading those chapters because the last time I watched through the anime the whole time I still identified as bisexual. And since then I've come out as a lesbian. So it felt a lot more personal.
Right.
But it's like, it's interesting that textually it has a lot of stuff like that, but I feel like in a broader thematic sense with, like, the focus on found families and stuff, like, it has a lot of appeal for queer people. And I feel like this is a thing that I end up explaining a lot with these 2000 shoujo like this and Fruits Basket to, like, younger people who are lucky enough to grow up in a post-Yuri on Ice world.
Right.
They can have stuff that's more, like, explicitly, like, open and to them, and, like, how different it was to navigate this stuff in, like, the mid 2000s as a queer person.
Right.
Yeah. Because even I would say that Ranka, as he is treated by characters, is actually treated fairly okay. Like, Haruhi really respects him.
Yeah.
Ranka himself is very, like, assured in his identity, where he's like, look, Haruhi's mom is going to be the only woman I've ever loved, and this is like my job and whatever.
Yeah.
And he's fine with it. And I think like for the most part, characters are like, we respect him, but then they always say like every slur that is possible they've called him in this manga, and I'm just like,
well, it's like it's not that unusual, I think, for if you were a kind of clueless high school boy in the mid 2000s. Like that was part of why I think I didn't quite realize my sexuality at the time. Is like it wasn't that people weren't accepting of it, but it was still kind of a punchline. It was still unusual, and so that kind of language sadly isn't really out of the norm, even for kids who seem like they're otherwise very accepting of weirdness and difference, to pull out those words in those situations.
Right. That's true. That is very, and you have to also remember that this is a story written by someone who lived in a time, which, I mean, I don't know a lot about Japanese culture, but just from what I understand, it seems like we in the States are probably a little bit more progressive, or have progressed with that a little bit more quickly.
I think they're kind of different. Just like there's sort of different problems with it. They don't have the really intense religious homophobia that we do,
right,
in Japan. But they have, they also have a way bigger societal focus on not making waves, and trying to do what's expected of your family. So I think it's like there isn't as much really hostile oppression toward LGBT people, but there's also not this, people don't see why they need to make a big deal out of it.
Right. Yes. Yes. You explained that so much better than what, because I was like, I don't know how, I know what I want to say, but I can't figure. Yes.
It's okay. I have to like be with like academics, I have to often be an ambassador for these kinds of questions.
That's awesome.
As like the Japan expert in whichever group or whatever.
I love it.
Even though I'm far from an expert on this particular topic. But I'll have people like, can you explain like why yaoi is a thing? And I'm like, well. When you're the anime like academic in your group of friends, you have to answer a lot of questions like that.
Excellent. Sounds like a dope life.
It's something.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, I would say Ranka is still like. Yeah, like he's positive character.
He's a positive representation.
Right, I definitely agree. And I like him. I think he's funny. I think that just anytime that he's anytime he's out and about, like that scene where the boys are all at Haruhi's house and they want to go like grocery shopping with her, and and she's like, "No, I'm gonna go by myself. Y'all are getting on my nerves." So she goes, and then somehow Tamaki also ends up going because he was like crying. But like, so Ranka is like gathering up the other boys, and they're like, "We're gonna dress up to go and follow them." But then he's like decked out in his like drag clothes, and he just looks gorgeous. And he's like, "Really, I just want to walk around with handsome men." I was like, "Yes, Ranka,
yes,
like,
Ranka,
feel you." So like, I don't know, I do really like him, which I get confused, and I feel like, should I call him or her? Because he doesn't. I think that's not really like a.
I don't think he's trans. I think he's a drag queen, and so like usually the etiquette is that when they're in drag, you say her, and like when they're performing, rather you say her, and then when they're not, you use whatever their normal pronouns are.
That makes sense. Because it wasn't really like made clear in the story, so I was like, I think he's a drag queen and not necessarily trans, but
well, that's the other thing about all the slurs, is that it's like not only are they like slurs as in bad, but they're actually misrepresenting what he is. So.
Right.
Yeah. And like, I think this was a thing that was common in media at the time, is people not understanding the difference between being transgender and drag.
Right. Yeah.
No, granted, there is some overlap. Like I've known drag queens who are trans women, but like they're separate things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say overall, he is treated well. Like thankfully he's not like, you don't really see him being like, I guess, abused or used as just, I don't feel like he's just being used as like comedic relief. Like he's like he's a good father. That's one thing that I do want to point out, because a lot of, in a lot of manga, parents are like awful. But he's actually attentive. I mean, he's a little like goofy, but he actually loves Haruhi and works hard to make sure that they have what they have, and I feel like he's portrayed in a good way.
Yeah. And Haruhi really wants to hang out with him. That is the central conflict, is that she's actually he just works too much, and all I really want to do is have more time with him.
Yeah.
Aw, so sweet. Okay.
Haruhi's the best.
Haruhi's the best, exactly. So I feel like we could get lost in a mire of recurring side characters that might be too long, but I know that Rose said you really liked Renge, so at least explain that to me.
She's not a very deep character. I find her very entertaining, and I feel like she's kind of that female character who gets unfairly crapped on by some parts of the fan base, but that's kind of made me like her all the more. But I like having a ridiculous woman there as a counterpart to Haruhi, who I think sometimes can stray a little bit too much. I think sometimes the way the narrative treats her can stray a little bit too into cool girl territory. So having a ridiculous fangirl who offsets her and who they still get along with for the most part and is not demeaned for that necessarily by the narrative felt very refreshing to me. And also I just find her hilarious. As
any 2 pages that she shows up, you're the funniest 2 pages in this show.
Yeah, her whole thing is that she wanted to be near Kyoya because he looks like some guy from a visual novel she was playing. It was just great.
Honestly, I think that there are people. This is, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I feel like people that don't like her are probably triggered because they're the people that go to places like Korea, for example, because they love K-pop and they hope that they're going to see their favorite oppa. That's what it's
similar to that a lot of the people I know who use the word fujoshi as an insult are themselves the biggest fujoshi. I think Renge hits people on a similar level, and she's easier to laugh at if you have a kind of sense of humor about that aspect of yourself.
Right, because I always liked her because of the fact that I am also a fangirl.
Yeah.
And
me too.
I relate to her and I think she's funny, and she's just kind of one of those those characters that pop up and they're oh ho, 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 ho.
Yeah.
I love those characters because they're so ridiculous, and which is interesting that I'm saying that when I just said that Tamaki is annoying, but Renge
only girls are allowed to be ridiculous.
Right. But she's funny to me, and she's not, you don't see her too often, so I think that's why I'm also cool
she's
with
still
her,
a contrast also to all the girls who come to the host club, because she's not in awe of the boys or anything.
Yeah, that's true.
When she realizes that Kyoya is not in fact her visual novel husband, though, they don't really have any particular effect on her, so she's still very in control of the situation and not fawning over them, and she kind of just amplifies the silliness that's already there, and I just love it.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, I don't feel this in my heart, but intellectually I'm that makes sense, and I like it. That's how I will think about that. Otherwise, I think some other side characters will come up later. But
Team Renge forever.
Team Renge forever. There we go. Okay, we got 2 other listener questions that we shall answer. Okay, so at Minty Honey on Twitter said, up until Volume 9, which of the host club members has influenced Haruhi the most? Curious if you guys think anybody has influenced Haruhi at all, and if who is the most?
That's the thing is, I feel like she kind of just keeps doing her own thing, and I feel like it's less that she's particularly influenced by them as they're influenced by her,
right? Yeah,
and by Tamaki. The other members are all influenced in various ways by her and by Tamaki.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, some of the thing, there are a couple of times when I got pretty annoyed at at the host guys, because they would say, there was that scene where they went to the beach and Haruhi stood up for that girl, and these guys were going to beat her up because they thought she was a guy, and then Tamaki was mad at her for jumping in and all that stuff. I was annoyed because I felt like everyone was Haruhi, you just don't pay attention, you just don't understand, you're not listening, you're not paying attention, and they're all upset with her for her actions and acting as though she's doing something to them, and that kind of annoyed me, because I'm she's just being herself. Like it was almost like it just felt like they were trying to make her apologize for something when she didn't really do anything. So I don't necessarily think that she is influenced by anyone. I think that maybe there was this kind of allusion to the fact that people are trying to that she's changing, but I don't think she needs to be changed, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think the point of that, which they didn't quite execute very clearly, was that she doesn't need to take care of everything herself, and she can let other people stand up for her. Because I don't like it. Like people often interpret that as sexist, and I can see that, but I think it's more about the fact that she is a small person who can't physically stand up to these boys, and it was sort of, let somebody else who can, stand up to them for you.
Right.
And that's sort of the theme of that. Like that's especially comes off clear in the anime, because there's sort of this theme about her, letting Tamaki hold her during the thunderstorm. She's so scared by thunderstorms. Of sort of like, learning to rely on other people. You don't have to try to take on everything yourself, which I think is the main thing that main way that Haruhi kind of grows as a character is like,
okay.
Yeah. But I don't know that either the anime or the manga executed that particular example of it very well.
Right. I mean, I don't think they did, because I really was like, whoa, this is like, is this sexist? Like I had that moment. I was like, what are they saying?
No.
Like, what is the message?
It was definitely, to me, it read as the typical, like, there's always the point in the shoujo manga where for girls who are tomboyish and everything, they have the, like, but you are a girl episode. Right. And they're like, we need to assert your femininity right now. So it read to me as trying to subvert that, but, like, not fully going for it. And I was like, okay, you almost did it. you were there. Right. I see what you were doing. Still kind of came off as the "You Are a Girl" episode, though. So.
Well, because also Kyoya, like the one time that I didn't like Kyoya was when it was in that same moment, like in that same arc when he like I don't know, like pretends like he's going to sexually assault her. Like it was such an I was like, whoa, Kyoya, what was up with that?
I know for a lot of people that's sort of why they don't like him as a character, is they can't get past that, which I totally understand. Like my sort of read on it was that he didn't genuinely want to do that. He felt like that's a thing he needed to demonstrate for her in that moment, which does not make it okay.
Right.
But I don't think that he was actually going to do that. But does not remotely make it okay. It's sort of, you can read it in terms of his whole arc of trying to figure out who he's supposed to be in particular moments versus who he actually wants to be.
Yeah, first that's definitely the thing in it for me. That was the biggest misstep. I think also because I really love the manga Maid-sama, which came out after Ouran. I know. That's all I have to say about it. I know. But like obviously came after Ouran, but has a lot of the same themes and like character archetypes going on. So there's definitely the same episode where it's like, the dude is like forcing himself upon Misaki, the main character, and you're just like, please don't do this right now.
It almost feels like it needs to be in there because it's a trope that some people are into. I just I wanted to say during that moment, like Kyoya, she doesn't need you to remind her that boys are a threat to her. Every girl is aware of this at all times.
Yeah, like we know. That was like the one scene where I was like, oh no, Kyoya, what are you doing? No.
Don't be a good boy, Kyoya. Come on.
We know you can be deep down.
Yeah, we know.
Right.
We know it's there. We know you like Haruhi. Don't lie. Yeah,
but I guess.
Okay, go on.
No. Go ahead. I was just gonna say I think I derailed.
No. I think it's a thing that needs to be talked about because I know it's definitely a stumbling block for a lot of people with this series.
Yeah. But if I was going to give a non-cop-out answer to who do I think Haruhi who influenced Haruhi the most, I would say the brothers, partially because like they are the ones that are near her a lot of the time, more often than the others, because they're in the same class. And I do think that there was that one Halloween episode where I was like, okay, Haruhi genuinely seemed to like take a step for them in particular. I think it was the first Halloween episode where Tamaki like foils their plan to like trick Haruhi into doing whatever they wanted by giving her tons of candy. So every time they say trick or treat, she's like able to give them a treat or whatever. Right. And she's like, nah, Halloween's like whatever. I don't really care about dressing up and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, they're like really into it because they're like pranksters and they're like, no, we want to do this. And then eventually by the end, she comes around and she's like, okay, their people are like, oh, the twins are trying and they're coming out of their shell. And she's like, and I want to facilitate that. So like, I'll go along with their silly plans and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's cute. Like, I'm down.
Yeah. I can see that. I still go back to like what you said earlier about how it seems more so that Haruhi has more influence on the guys than they really do.
I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Right.
Everybody's being influenced by Haruhi and Tamaki, and then I guess eventually they'll influence each other later volume. I don't know, whatever.
Right.
The last question we got was from @floatingcloud1 on Twitter. And do you think Ouran could get a new anime, a redo similar to Fruits Basket this season?
I honestly had that thought.
Yeah.
It could, but I don't feel like I need it as much.
Right.
Like, I think the anime that exists is like perfect. So I don't feel like I need a continuation. Maybe I'll feel differently when I read further in the manga, but like I kind of feel like the anime like is fine and doesn't really leave me feeling unsatisfied the way that like the original Fruits Basket anime did.
Yeah.
Right. Also, going back to like the things that we said didn't age well, I just don't see how they would, like, if they were going to really follow the manga, I just don't see how they could keep certain things in and make it still true to the manga and get away with it. Not in 2019.
Yeah.
I'm kind of worried how Fruits Basket is going to do that with some of the stuff that it has to adapt even.
Yeah.
But like, because it's
very true.
But like because it's a drama, I feel like dramas don't age as poorly as comedies age like milk. Like
Yeah.
And I mean, I still find Ouran funny, but there's some parts of it that have definitely aged like milk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Because Fruits Basket is a drama and it's kind of like it is exploring some of those dark themes.
Yeah.
Even as they're problematic, you like kind of give it a pass because you're like, okay, it's trying to say something for real. Whereas those things in Ouran are always just kind of like a throwaway thing. And you're like, eh.
And I never thought people could do an anime of Banana Fish in 2018, and they did. So
and they did. So, you know, this is what so I'm not saying that it won't happen and that I don't think like I think there could be commercial appeal because people have been crying for a season 2 for forever since for a decade or whatever or more. But yeah, I would agree that it's, you know, the Ouran anime was a much higher quality anime than the first Fruits Basket anime was.
Well, it was by Studio Bones of, you know, Full Metal Alchemist and now My Hero Academia and Mob Psycho. So yeah.
Yeah, so like I just don't know that it's the same like quality argument is there and those type of things. But if when Bisco Hatori is at Anime Expo in July, they suddenly announced that there was going to be a new anime, I'd be like, I'm not shocked. I'm not.
Yeah, and I certainly won't be upset.
Yeah,
I would watch it. I would definitely watch it. So
yeah. I would hope it isn't like a Full Metal Alchemist situation where people want to write off the old one because I'm sick of having that argument about that show. And I don't want to have. I'm very attached to that Ouran anime.
That's true. Whereas it's like easier with the Fruits Basket to be like, the old one.
I don't know very many people who are attached to that old anime.
Right?
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I would be shocked. I'd be shocked. I know people were attached to the old voice actors, but
they're all in the new one. So
they're all in the new one.
Exactly.
So. For Fruits Basket, they would have to have some recasting for Ouran because of the stuff. Of this and you know what? I wouldn't really mind having another voice to associate with Tamaki.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, this will be the plague of shoujo anime. A lot, especially for older things that were adapted in the mid 2000s that never reached completion. It's like, will they reboot it? I don't know. Maybe we live in the land of the era of reboots.
Very true.
Yeah, everything is being rebooted.
Yeah. So never say never.
Right. Yeah.
It's my conclusion all the time. So I guess I briefly wanted to discuss this genre thing. Rose had called it a reverse harem earlier, and I'm kind of like, when do we get to make reverse harems just be harems? Like, why do we?
Yeah, it's a difficult designation when you consider gender dynamics. Like, what happens if it's the harem is the same gender as the protagonist, like,
Right.
or they're different genders, you know, like in visual novels where there's like the one gay option, like where does this end?
Yeah, like
Right.
why
I mean, I
can't
kind
they
of
all
see
just
it
be
as
harems?
right. I mean, I see all harems as like it's a harem. You know, like in general I don't say, oh, reverse harem, or it's I don't even know if I should. It's I hate to say it, but it's sort of like how when people say reverse racism, I'm like, no, it's just racism. Like
Oh yeah.
it's like it's all this, it's all racism, so like all the hair, it's like they're all harems, we don't really need to like differentiate, I guess. I mean, I see why
They do have
where it
different
came
sets of
from.
tropes, though.
Right.
Like I do feel
right.
like they are different genres. Like, you know, that reverse harems and harems sort of developed for their own audiences and with their own
Right.
sets of tropes, and their own like sets of character types. Even though there's often some overlap, like the Megane character. There's Mega Neko characters and harem animes, but there are some different ones.
That is very true. I wonder if there's like a way that we could make up I don't know, words that like instead of
Gender
calling
neutral
it like
harems.
yeah, like just to make
Gender
it
neutral
like
harem
Yeah.
right, yeah, because it's like, I mean, because you made a good point, Rose, about like how the different types of harems do have different kinds of tropes because they're appealing to different, demographics. So
And even then, the glasses character is a little bit different if it's a male or female.
right,
Because,
yeah,
the appeal of the smart girl to men is a little bit different than the appeal of the
Right.
smart guy to girls.
exactly. Ooh, that is very
I
true.
mean, girls are always better about these things than men.
Yeah.
Sorry, men. I'm not even that sorry. You're just wrong. That's
Right,
fine.
I'm like, don't apologize.
Don't apologize. I have no apologies
That
for
was
you.
always my struggle as a lesbian watching anime, is I could not get into the stuff with women in it because the women didn't feel like real people.
Right.
The male
Right.
characters felt more like
Right.
real women.
Right.
Oh god.
Yes.
It's too true.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
Deep
that's a
cuts.
whole, like, that gets into a whole conversation about like things that tend to be written for, like, if a man writes something,
Yeah.
like usually when men write female characters, it's like, what is this? Like, do you have any women in your life? Like,
do you know
Yeah,
a woman?
although like I think you could, although I think something like Ouran, the characters are pretty unrealistic too, in like a way that
True.
appeals to what women find appealing in men,
That
and
is
like
very
female
true.
fantasies. Like, so I mean, but it's it's a different kind of unrealistic. I don't know that men feel insulted watching something like Ouran in the way that I often feel insulted when I watch
Yeah.
female fantasies for men.
Right. And or
Yeah.
insecure.
I mean, I could definitely see men feeling insecure about being
Yeah.
compared to Prince Tamaki.
True. Well, yeah.
I was about to say, I feel like men get mad sometimes. They're like, look at all these beta males over here, whatever nonsense. And then I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm
they
sorry
do.
that women like made you nice people and you always just
Yeah,
make
I was just
women
making a
big
joke about how
boobs.
pretty Tamaki.
Yeah, like God, why? It's always baffling to me. I'm like, men are so weird. Men are so-
It's very true. I mean, well, the thing like that cracks me up is, so like, I love the fact that Haruhi, for example, is like this flat-chested, character, and she's still the heroine, because as someone who is flat-chested, when I've read like other, let's say, I guess, typical harem, manga, or anything that has like, or anything that's like romantic, that's geared toward, say, men or boys, the heroine is always like busty, curvy, like all of these things, and it's like,
And
wow.
I'll say, as someone on the other end of the spectrum, that stuff is not remotely relatable to me.
Right. That's good to know, because I'm like, wow.
It's just not how boobs work, you guys.
Right.
Yeah, it's not how they work,
That's not how
and
boobs
that's
they're
not how
so-
we feel about them usually.
Yeah.
Right. Right, because I've never, like, I have a lot, most of my woman friends are quite a lot more busty than I am. Like almost every woman is more busty than I am, and so like, I've never heard them say, "Oh yes, these are so great." Usually they're like, "Oh my gosh, cut them off!" Like, I don't want them.
Too heavy.
it's so like, especially because I dabble in like the ballet scene. And
Yeah.
so especially there, like my teacher, who's also one of my best friends, she's very busty, and she's just like, oh my gosh, Aisha, like I envy you because you can wear a leotard and you don't have to, you're not jiggling around.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
I felt
wow.
like the anime Please Tell Me Galgo-chan was the most hashtag relatable portrayal of having big boobs, where she just gets frustrated about the assumptions that people make about her as a busty girl.
Oh,
Amazing.
yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh, harems. Why are you
Right?
always
Yeah.
like this? Why are you like this?
Right.
This is my conclusions. I'm looking through our other big topics list. What are other things that we haven't? We haven't really talked about how they're from different social classes, and that's like,
Oh yeah, I have
yeah.
stuff to say about that topic.
okay, please
No,
do.
no. If you guys have stuff to say too, I had some
You go
ideas in
ahead.
my head. Well, like one of the things that I thought was interesting is like, okay, so I went to a public school, but I went to one where I was much less wealthy than most of my classmates, and a lot of them were like kids of auto execs and stuff. I'm from Detroit, so that's usually
Okay.
how people get rich there, and like it was interesting to me, this whole idea. And also, my mom teaches at a private school, though hers is more like Lobelia because it's an all-girls school. It isn't nearly as fancy. But there's a private school in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, that is basically Ouran. That's called Cranbrook Kingswood.
Wow.
Look it up on Google Images. I'm not kidding.
Oh wow.
It looks like a university campus.
Kingswood.
Apparently, Mitt Romney went there, so that gives you an idea of what we're dealing with here.
Okay, yeah.
Anyway, one of the things that's interesting, and I don't know if this is just, the show making a joke about it, or if this is a genuine difference between Japan and the United States, but this idea that they have like different cultural products. And because I feel like in the US that's not a thing. Like when I'd go to my wealthier friends' houses who have like a 6-car garage or whatever, we'd eat the same fast food that we ate at my house. Like it wasn't like we were eating caviar and oysters or something.
Right.
But yeah, it's like I wonder if that's an actual cultural difference or just a part of the way that this manga makes jokes about wealth. But like I do feel like in the US there is sort of this idea with wealthy people that they don't want to flaunt it because we have this, cultural myth of social mobility that doesn't exist in a place that's more stratified like Japan or England or other similar places. That's my hot take on wealth in Ouran.
Yeah. To me, it's interesting because I'm like, but that means, obviously we all do get different cultural, like, does that mean they never watched television? Is kind of what I'm like, you would see these things
like
on television.
The main difference with my wealthier friends and I growing up was like they would get the same stuff I had like a year earlier than I did, or have more of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That makes sense.
I mean, personally, I don't know any like really wealthy people like that I can think of. I mean, I'm from Oklahoma. I'm like, what is wealth? Like, what is? I'm like,
throwing Oklahoma under the bus here.
Right.
Don't they have some oil barons there or something?
You know,
they have those in Texas.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So like, yes, but like the oil industry here kind of had like a major crash a few years ago.
Yeah.
And so all of those people are now like, which I get some sort of sick delight out of it, because like women that would drive through with their like oil field wife stickers on the back of their big trucks. God. I was like, what are you doing now? Like, I know that's terrible, but so
I mean, the same thing kind of happened to the auto industry in Detroit too. Although all those people are still wealthy.
Yeah, not here. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is some wealth in Oklahoma, but not, I mean, most of us are like middle class and below. And so like, I don't really have any like anecdotes, to like compare to, but it is very interesting that the rich people at Ouran seem to have no real grasp on the cultural things going on. Like, how do you not know what like packaged ramen is? Like, how do you like, how do you not know what cup ramen is? Like, it's just
I also went to college at at Johns Hopkins, where there were a lot of rich people there, and they were eating as much cup ramen as I was.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
For me, so it's actually funny because now I live with Asher, who went to a private school named called Pinecrest or something snobby, like
Oh, God.
something like that. And then
Really do look up Cranbrook Kingswood though if you want to see a ridiculous rich people school.
yeah, I do.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh, I
it even
do.
made it into a diss track in an Eminem song. That's because
Wow.
so well known in the Detroit area is where rich people go.
Where rich people go. Yeah. So then both Asher and I went to Brown University, which is snobby Ivy League.
Yeah.
So definitely there I was like, oh my God, I came from public school. Like, I'm a poor person here and everything. But like, yeah, no, you're all eating at our main cafeteria. I forget what its actual name was, but its nickname was the Ratty. We're all eating at the Ratty. It's not like, what is
Wow.
this? What is this, Ouran? What are you trying to say here? I don't buy this at all. It's funny, but I don't buy it.
Yeah, but maybe I don't know if it is a cultural difference. Like one of the things I keep thinking about is reading the book Crazy Rich Asians and seeing the movie.
Oh yeah.
I've read there are 3 books. I've read 2 of them, and I'm gonna read the 3rd one because I love those books so much. They're it's in a similar way, just this sort of like wealth tourism
Yeah.
that you get out of reading it. Just this sort of enjoyment of laughing at ridiculous rich people while also kind of wishing you had their lives.
Yeah.
Right.
But that was interesting because it felt more like kind of an in-between between this sort of model of the wealthy as secluded and beyond everyone else versus, the wealthy is just, having more of what the rest of us have. Like they were sort of somewhere in the middle. But I mean, then that's not Japan, that's Singapore and China. So there could be differences there too.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would recommend those books and that movie to Ouran fans who like the wealth tourism aspect of
Right.
it.
As somebody who has watched the movie and read the first book, agree.
I guess I need to.
Yeah, you need to.
They're pretty fun.
They're pretty fun.
Okay.
Another good, genuine, relatable female protagonist too.
Oh yeah, that's true. The most genuine moment for me in Ouran related to the class differences was when they did the cultural festival, and Haruhi was just like, isn't the cultural festival supposed to be about like self-sufficiency and hard work and everything? And they were like, no, it's about foresight and leadership. And I was like, okay.
That actually, yes, I do. Yeah.
That was something that I found like more similar though to like, what clubs are like in American high schools. Like I feel like this, Japanese high school thing, and I don't know how genuine that is in real high schools versus an anime thing.
Right.
Like this idea of it just being a way to have fun was not my experience. Everyone was doing it to build up their resumes for college.
Oh,
Even if you were doing some of them for fun, it was still like, well, I've got to do this in a way to build up my resume. And especially the school, I went to a really competitive high school. So like, that was actually something that rang truer to my experience than some of the other stuff in Ouran.
Yeah.
But not to the ridiculous sense of I need to prove that I'm going to inherit my dad's company.
That I'm worthy of inheriting my dad's company by making the best cultural festival, whatever they do at cultural festivals.
Yeah.
Haunted house, the best haunted house. Like,
Right. It actually makes me think too of how what was it when they were going on their summer trip and someone wanted to go to Kyoto and one of the other guys was like, "What do you mean? You don't want to like leave the country?" Like all of these things, like it was kind of like making
Haruhi
fun
was
of
definitely
the
like, I would
commoner.
like to go to
Yeah.
Kyoto someday, and they were like, what?
Right, and they're like, Kyoto? Like, why would you want to go there?
Well, you could go to
And-
Paris.
Yeah, you
right, right. Which Kyoto is very nice. And it is actually very true that like you do see a lot of school kids that go on trips there because when we were up there was like school kids everywhere and we actually got stopped by these like kids and they're like, "Will you take a picture with us?" And my husband and I were like, "Oh, sure. Little kid, is this okay to like talk
Is
to
this
strange
okay to-
children?"
Should you be talking to us right now?
Right. It's like, where are your parents? Where are your guardians?
We're not trying
But-
to kidnap this child right,
Right.
now.
We're like, we don't want it. But yeah, so that was kind of an interesting, like, I don't know if that was genuine. I don't know if like rich people in Japan don't go to Kyoto. I doubt.
I mean,
that.
I think that's kind of a rich people thing in general, though, is that like they've gone to these places. There's sort of an affluence culture involved in where you go traveling.
Mhm.
Like, I know that, like, you know, when I was growing up, like, if you were above a certain level of affluence, you'd kind of look down at the people whose big vacation was Disney World because you could go to Europe. So there is that
Okay.
kind of aspect of it, I think,
Right.
for rich people everywhere.
Right.
Like, they've probably been to Kyoto before, so they're like, you know, why would you want to waste your school trip there when you could go here?
Right.
You know?
That's interesting. I mean, again, I'm from Oklahoma, so like to me, going to Disney World, I haven't been yet, so I would love to.
Yeah, I know.
I
Yeah.
haven't been.
Okay, I mean, the biggest question for me when I woke up to go to the bathroom at 5 a.m. one day, I was like, but wouldn't they figure out Haruhi's gender? Because she'd have to use the restroom at some point. And then I was like, Ouran probably has like private restrooms or something.
I've been to Cranbrook Kingswood because I took the SAT there.
Okay, please tell me
they do not have private restrooms. From what I remember,
this is a plot
they had
hole.
stalls and the whole shebang. My mom's school, which is a private school, only has private restrooms for staff.
Maybe
Plot
she
hole.
just.
But that's also a girls' school though. So, but like they have men's and women's bathrooms for, you know, visitors, and they have like a brother school of like a boys' school, and they can take classes at the other one when they're juniors and seniors. So they do have boys there from time to time.
Plot hole.
Yeah. I mean, maybe she holds it. I don't know. When I was in school, I used to hold it.
Come on.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Well, maybe you know, boys' bathrooms sometimes still have stalls. Maybe she just always uses the stall.
Yeah, she's brave. She doesn't care. Haruhi doesn't care. Haruhi's like, I go where I want.
Which is actually true because she's not really actively trying to hide the fact that she's a girl. Like, the guys are hiding it, but she's kind of like, I don't really care if people find out.
No, her gender is very flippantly, like, Tamaki figures it out by looking at her ID, and it has circled female. And Tamaki's like, you're a girl? And she's like, yeah, never said otherwise.
I like how in the anime they show when each of them figure it out with the light bulb popping.
Oh, yeah.
So the anime, the writer of that, Yoji Inokido, was a writer on Utena, and that's why there's a lot of like Utena-ish symbolic stuff in there.
Yeah. Didn't you like say
like
that?
The arrows and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my mind is blown right now. So like, wow,
it always comes back to Utena for me.
It always comes back to Utena.
Like, wow.
It's always Utena, y'all.
I mean, really, it all comes back to Rose of Versailles, which is the
that's true.
Original shoujo that started all these.
Really, it's all
patterns.
Oscar all the time. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm actually really salty that I have not seen that, and I tried to watch it on my Amazon like video or whatever, but you can't get it. It's not available. So
you can watch Utena on YouTube.
Yeah,
they have the entire thing. They have the entire thing for free from Nozomi Entertainment. Watch the sub.
Yeah, definitely watch the sub. I watched it dub. Mistake. True mistake.
No.
Oh, because the dub was the only thing that was on Hulu, and I didn't know beforehand that all of it is for free on YouTube. Shout out, everybody. You can watch Utena for free on YouTube, okay? You should definitely do that. Yeah, I think the other aspect that we only mentioned briefly was this idea of found families, which I think is very big in shoujo. I think it is always very interesting in shoujo because it always has the connotation of like, but your found family could become your real family if you marry them, sort of deal.
Yeah.
And that to me is like, what, like, I'm like, is that where Tamaki's humor is trying to go with him being like, I'm your father, but just kidding.
I think he just genuinely is that clueless. But yeah, the found family is one of those things where, like I said, like the different parts of Ouran in terms of the queer stuff are at war with themselves. And like, I feel like found families are like a thing that queer theory spends a lot of time talking about in media because it's a thing that obviously appeals to a lot of LGBT people who've been rejected by their biological families. And so like, that's a thing that I think also maybe explains that appeal, is that so many of these, not so much Haruhi really, but the boys have various ways of not fitting into their, you know, biological families, whether it's like the complicated stuff that Tamaki and Kyoya are dealing with, or, you know, Honey Senpai just likes cake more than he's supposed to. So I think that's a thing that you can, see as relatable, even if you like on a deeper level, even if you're not a fan of some of the jokes that are made in that show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way before, but that is a good summation of it. Because, yeah, it's like Tamaki is obviously actually rejected. Because I don't think that most of them are actually rejected by their family, except Tamaki is actually genuinely rejected by his grandmother for being an illegitimate child.
Bless his heart. I do feel bad for him.
You feel bad for him?
I do. It's so horrible. Yeah, no, I think that's
he's so good.
Yeah. He's so good.
I mean, he's alright, but he doesn't deserve to be treated that way.
Yeah, no, he does not.
He's a good boy. Yeah. I think those are all like, unless we wanted to just talk more about authenticity, but I think that like, yeah, it's fun. Like part of why Haruhi is the best is because even I feel like it does a lot of cyclical things. I think actually this comes out the most with Kasanoda, who we've only mentioned in like the recap of what happened here. Mm-hmm. But Kasanoda is like raised to be a certain stereotype of what a Yankee like delinquent boy Yakuza person is. So he actually internalizes those things, but it still doesn't actually capture like who he genuinely is. But even then, when he does learn to be genuine, because Haruhi is like, what you just need is like a friend who accepts you and you like feel better now, right? Like you have two friends and that's fun. He's still like playing a stereotype of a Yankee though.
Yeah, I like what you said, because I never really thought about this, but it's true. Like how the host club is kind of this place where they can all be themselves, away from all the pressures of the outside world.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's part of why it's so appealing.
Right.
Even while it is like actually the most like facade of a thing, right? Like they're just being like,
but it's like these characters they play to some degree are more true to who they are than like who they have to be in front of other people.
Right.
Yeah, like because they're all in on the facade, whereas like social class is like a performance, but that people aren't acknowledging is a performance. Whereas host club is a performance that they all know is a performance, and they're like, okay, like I see it.
And gender is a performance. Judith Butler would have a field day with Ouran.
Yeah, that's true. Gender is a performance as well.
Yes,
Haruhi is constantly like both, and that's why Haruhi is fun, because Haruhi is like both performing,
just really not interested in it.
Yeah,
right.
She's like, I'm just doing this, but like don't really care either way, and like people interpret what she says very differently than like the tone that she has in her head a lot of the time, which is where the comedy comes from.
I've seen a lot of people who interpret Haruhi as genderqueer, and like I think I can see where that comes from. Like I don't think that she would care enough to set herself, create a particular label for herself, because like from what I've seen from genderqueer people is you have to be very committed to that, because people are going to misgender you and stuff unless you make it very clear how you identify. So I don't think that she would care that much, but like I can definitely see how like genderqueer people feel, like their experiences are reflected in who Haruhi is.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And yeah, Haruhi, again, even when she dresses up, obviously she dresses up as male at school because now she's indebted to the host club and has to pretend to be a boy. But even when she's dressed up as female outside of school, a lot of the times there will be a note where it's like her dad packed this for her and stuff.
Yeah, there's sort of this sense that whether she's pretending to be a boy or she's acting girly, it's always kind of a performance for her.
Right. And also her personality does not change based on how she's dressed. She doesn't feel the need to say act quote unquote feminine when she's dressed in girls' clothes, or masculine when she's dressed up like a boy. She's just herself, and people kind of interpret that based on what they see in their own like views of what masculinity and femininity is, I guess.
I like the scene when they're all dressed up as samurai and she's just kind of like staring into space and all the girls are like, oh, he's such a cool detached person, and then she's thinking about how there's like a sale on meat at the supermarket.
She's like, I'm hungry, what am I gonna cook later?
What am I gonna cook tonight? This is nice.
That's relatable.
Relatable.
That's like honestly my life. It's like, what are we gonna have for dinner?
I know. Haruhi's just keeping it real, y'all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we should go on to, this won't be a full-blown shipping corner, but I do think that we should talk about some ships that we imagined or who we wanted Haruhi to be with at this point in the manga. Like, has it changed over the years?
I mean, I always was team Haruhi and Tamaki.
You know, honestly, same. Like the first time I read it, I really liked Tamaki, you know, and so I wanted them together. This time, like I said, I think he's annoying, but I still think that they are good for each other.
Yeah.
You know, like I
And
think
it's because they actually aren't that different. They both have that sort of selflessness to them. They just express it differently.
Mm-hmm.
They had that cute, one of the last chapters that we read was the, like, thing with the princess, I forget what country she's supposed to be from.
Oh,
but
it was a country that I actually stupidly looked up because
you thought it was a real country.
I was like, is this a real country that I've just never
I feel like
heard
it's
of
supposed to be
somehow?
some dinky country like Monaco or something.
Yeah, that would
Right.
Or
make
like
sense.
Liechtenstein or something like that.
Yeah. But so a princess from like a tiny, I think they said it was European country.
Yeah. It's always a tiny European country.
Yeah, tiny European country.
When they make up these countries, it's always like fake Monaco.
Yeah.
Right.
So they were like, she's not actually that wealthy, and she looks like Tamaki's mother, and so Tamaki's just trying to like be really nice to her because he knows that she's putting on a facade. And he's like, I'm going to play into it fully, partially because he's a nice boy like that, and he wants people to be happy. He wanted her to genuinely smile. And the other part was that he was like, oh, she looks like my mother. And he's going to confess that to Haruhi. And he's like, yeah, she looks like somebody who's important to me. And Haruhi has already heard this theory from the other host club members at this point. And he's like, don't laugh at me. And then she's like, no, I want to be a lawyer. I too am like, you know, haunted by the shadow of my mother and stuff. And she's like, I would never laugh at you. And I was like,
yeah, and
again, I feel the doki dokis.
That was, that like that moment. I was like, yep, I am right to ship them.
I know.
Yeah.
Because they do really work well together, in my opinion. I think the fact that, because Haruhi to me seems like she's a little bit more introverted, not shy, just introverted, and Tamaki is very extroverted, and I think that they work well together, and he clearly is willing to do whatever he can to like make sure that she's happy and smiling, and it's just so cute to see him like, I don't know, like
one of the things I was thinking about with the shipping is that like obviously I'm like Haruhi Tamaki forever, but I never read that much fan fiction of it because I feel like the narrative kind of gives me what I want between the two of them, whereas like I read a lot of fan fiction of my various Ouran / pairings because I don't get those in the narrative.
That makes sense. So Kyoya and Tamaki, right?
Yeah. I mean, like Kyoya, Tamaki, and Haruhi are kind of like my OT3.
I can see that.
Like I kind of like every possible combination of them, even though I kind of like read Kyoya as gay rather than bisexual, but like, you know, I'm not picky about this. He and Haruhi also have an interesting dynamic because I think they're kind of like the two sensible people in this room full of goofuses.
They definitely are that.
And that like I mean I like the way that Tamaki has an effect on Kyoya and sort of rattles him and gets him to sort of access parts of himself that he didn't know were there, and so that's why I'm really into their dynamic. And Honey and Mori are sort of the ones that I ship in a more joking way.
But Honey Mori wants to kiss Honey. That's kind of
it's just that they, you know, there's not much to them as characters.
Right.
Yeah,
it's
also it's just weird to read stuff about them with that Honey senpai, like, you know, it's just,
aren't they also kind of like a stereotype of like big gay dude and like little
right
dude?
It just I guess for me
they're also cousins, which is probably a problem for people.
Right. They're cousins, which I mean, you know, depending on where you're raised, I mean, cousins might not mean anything. Here to me it's weird, but I mean, that's what, but I more so have issue with the fact that like Honey literally looks like a child.
Yeah, yeah.
And Mori looks like a grown man. Like, and so I'm just like, that dynamic, I'm just like,
It's severely limit. Like, I tried to write a fan fiction about them, and it was really hard for me
Yeah.
to like put myself in the mind of someone who was sexually attracted to Honey.
Right,
Senpai.
exactly.
Like, I can't
Yes.
write this. I can't write this. This is too
Yes.
weird.
That's exactly where I'm because it's just like not. I'm just like I don't get it. I think that's my whole thing with Honey is that like people, like, he's supposed to be like, I guess, appeal to people who, like, in one of the volumes they mentioned something about how he appeals to like what is it, Shota, is it
Yeah,
Shota Con,
yeah.
Shota Con or something like that. This was a thing
Yeah.
I didn't know about this. So like Shota,
Which there
and I
aren't
was
that
like,
many
ugh.
fans of, like, thankfully. Like,
Right.
any sort of, like, you know, group of pretty boys, it's always the youngest looking one who is the least popular character.
Right.
At least in terms of the, you know, who is my husband-o question.
Yeah. The only important question.
Like, I don't think I've ever met an Ouran fan where, like, you know, they were like, Honey Senpai is my, you know, boyfriend.
Yeah,
And
right.
it was always, like, every single one of the other ones, but never him.
Right. Because he's just, I mean, he's a child, and
Yeah.
as someone who lives
Even
with
if
children,
even if he's actually the oldest one, which
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's the aesthetic. I live with children. I have some, and I'm just like,
yeah, exactly.
No, because
No.
they're
It's just too weird.
No, it's weird and they're annoying anyway. Like there's nothing appealing about children.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, my 18-year-old college students look like babies to me. So
right.
Yeah,
And-
no, I look at high schoolers and I'm like, y'all are babies. Why am I reading manga
Yeah.
about you? You're babies.
Right. It's crazy because when it's like when I was in high school,
I
I
solved
remember
the problem
people
in that
looking-
fan fiction by giving him a Momiji growth spurt, by the way.
Oh,
in case anyone was
nice.
wondering.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
And no, I'm not going to link it in the. Don't link it.
Yeah,
Don't
no.
find it.
This.
Nobody's finding this.
I mean,
Sorry,
I'm a little
continue what you were
curious.
about to say.
No, you're fine. I think I was just saying that, like, I remember being in high school and thinking that we all looked like, well, not all of us, I didn't, but like people looked older, you know?
Mhm.
And then now I look back and I'm like, no, they were children, and high school kids look like children, and it's
Yeah.
just weird. I'm just, I'm good on Honey.
Yeah. I do have to say that I kind of, this is unrelated to Honey and Mori, but I do I liked Casanova, and I was like, I would be cool if Haruhi was like, yeah, I like Casanova.
That's something I
Really?
see a lot in like Tamaki Kyoya fanfics. It was like I'm always interested in who they pair Haruhi with, and I saw one that paired her with Casanova. I'm like, I'm down with that.
Yeah.
Huh.
I like it
nice.
better than when they pair her with Mori, because Mori
Ugh.
has a soulmate, and that's Honey Senpai.
Yeah, no, definitely. No.
I'm just really Casanova. Really, I actually would have shipped her more, like Haruhi. If I was going to ship her with anyone other than Tamaki, it would be the leader of Lobelia. Like,
Oh
because
yeah, that's
Benny,
under.
because she is so I love her.
She's
Like,
beautiful.
I would have loved to have seen more of her. I know you get a couple. I know she makes appearances, but not enough. I actually would like
Yeah.
a series about
Lobelia.
them.
I would
Yes.
read that series.
I would
so
read
hard.
that.
Maybe that's
I
what's
mean,
going to be announced.
To be fair,
Yes.
that exists in several forms in Yuri manga. That basic
Oh,
thing,
Right.
that basic concept.
That basic.
Yeah, I'm totally
like-
that's yes.
Watch Strawberry Panic if you're about that. Although none of those
Oh,
girls are
it's-
none of those girls are as beautiful as her though. But I mean, it's
Oh.
the girl school Yuri type.
Oh, that's what that's
Mm.
about? I
Yeah.
never knew. People have recommended it to me, and I didn't. I was like, I
It's
don't know what this is.
it's very silly and tropey, but it's a Yuri about an all girls school.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Which there are a lot of those. There are a lot of those. It's a whole trope in Yuri manga, which I think the Lobelia stuff was sort of riffing on. Was the
Mm,
all girls, and I mean, there's truth in real life too.
Yeah.
right.
All right. So, does anybody have any final thoughts? My final thought is, why did Haruhi and Casanova not play Kick the Can? That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I want him to get to play kick the can with someone.
I know.
That was the thing I realized. Like I already liked his character, but I like reading the manga. I'm like, wow, I really like him. I hope he gets to be happy.
I want him to be happy.
And I mean, that's kind of how I feel about everybody in this manga. I want even weirdo Nekozawa to be happy. I mean, he's a cat.
Yeah.
He's a cat person. I can relate to him on that level.
Yeah.
I actually liked him.
Yeah.
He was a funny character to me. I didn't really much care for the arc where he's trying to get his sister to like him or
Oh, you didn't
whatever.
like it?
Yeah.
In general, I don't really like the whole brother sister complex type stories. I think those are weird, but Japan and their brother sister complexes.
We didn't even talk about how we feel about people who ship the twins.
Oh God.
Oh.
No.
That is a thing.
Do people do that? People
do
them?
that. People totally ship them.
No.
Huh.
It's a thing you see when you read like slash fan fiction of the other pairings, is that they're often a side pairing and you're just like
I'd prefer not to. That's incest.
I try not to be judgmental, but
I have lines at incest.
just like I don't know about that one. Yeah, I also don't really like them anyway, so I feel like they would be a terrible couple. Like,
yeah.
oh my gosh. Ugh. Yeah, no.
Is Ouran a classic? I guess should we answer that question?
It is to me.
Hedging.
I'll put it this way. Ouran is not. It's something that I feel like if you jumped on the Ouran bandwagon like back when it was kind of still popular, yes, it's a classic, but I would not recommend it necessarily to everyone who hasn't read it now. I think a lot of people wouldn't get it.
Yeah, I mean,
now,
it's like the anime I like the most that I don't really quickly recommend to newbies, both because of the stuff that doesn't age well, but also because you kind of have to be familiar with shoujo anime to get a lot of its humor,
right?
Because it riffs on other anime so much. But I still think it's kind of, there isn't really anything like it out there.
Right.
Like that it's about shoujo. I mean, the closest thing I would think now would be like Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, which maybe is the Ouran for the 2010s.
Which isn't even technically a shoujo.
Yeah, but it's it's very shoujo-ish, and it riffs on shoujo tropes, and in not always the same way that Ouran does.
Yeah.
But so I feel like other than that, there isn't really anything else like it out there, and for that reason, I think it endures. And so, but I would definitely recommend it to a lot of caveats now, and I'm not, I've seen the Tumblr teens try to make sense of it, and they don't seem to know what to make sense of it, and often just say it's unforgivably problematic. And you know what, that's a fine take to have on it,
right?
If you're watching it now and you have other things that you can watch, but it holds a special place in my heart.
Right, same.
Yeah.
It's nostalgic for me, because like I said earlier, it was one of the first series that I had started collecting, and so I love it, but I think I love it in the same way that you love your kid that's like a troublemaker. Like if you have a kid that gets in trouble,
I see.
it's like, I love you. I know you have some problematic tendencies, but I still love you, and
it's
I'm
a
not
problematic
gonna,
fave.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
a problematic fave, and I would say that if people are really interested in reading something from the not too distant past, because it is, it's past, then pick it up. Otherwise,
I mean, I think it still holds up as a good thing, other than some jokes that haven't aged well.
Yeah.
Or maybe not we're not even the greatest jokes at the time.
Yeah, they were just they were never great.
I first watched it in 2014 and I loved it, so...
I would say, particularly, it still works well probably as any hesitant men in your life who are like, what's a good shoujo? I think it's still appealing to that demographic.
Yeah, because it has enough of a sense of humor about that. And it isn't something where you have to be super into the cute boys to love it. So I think it works if they're interested in it, like for the guys I know who are interested in shoujo, I'd recommend that as a comedy, and Fruits Basket as a drama. Those are usually my recommendations. But Ouran is an easy, like I was saying earlier, it's a much easier recommendation.
Yeah.
Right.
So Ouran, it's here. It was a big thing. Maybe it's dwindling now, but
who knows? Maybe we'll get a reboot.
Maybe it'll get a reboot.
Right.
Oh man.
And I certainly would not complain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely watch it.
Yeah.
I would watch that. Okay. Thanks for listening to Shojo Tell. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Need to gush about your OTP? Tell us what your favorite side character gags are in this. I don't know. Lots of things that you could talk about. Email shoujoandtell@gmail.com or leave a comment on shoujoandtell.com/Ouran1. We're at Shojo and Tell on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and Tumblr. So Rose, where can people find you and your work on the internet?
Well, I'm currently taking a break from Anime News Network reviewing right now because I'm going to be doing Japanese immersion this summer. But you can follow me on Twitter at ComposeRose.
And Aisha, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, definitely not where Rose is. I'm just like, she's so I'm so impressed.
Oh no, don't worry about it. You have a YouTube show.
But
That's
yes,
really
you
cool.
can. Right. Oh, thank you. So yes, I am on YouTube at Mama Loves or my YouTube channel is Mama Loves Manga, and you can find me on Instagram at Mama Loves Manga, and also Twitter under the same name. I don't use my Twitter as often, but I'm on
You're
there.
getting better
So
You're working
yeah,
on
I'm
it.
getting better. I'm working on it.
It's okay. Twitter is
Twitter
you should never apologize for not using Twitter more.
Yeah,
Right.
it's fair. It's a fair thing to not do. Are you excited every time you see an episode from us? If so, please consider leaving a rating in iTunes or Stitcher. This will help the podcast reach more hearts, or at least ears. As you can guess, next episode will be about the second half of Ouran High School Host Club. It'll be almost as good as getting a season 2 of the anime. I'm just kidding, it won't be, but it should still be fun. So stay tuned until then. Bye.